We all know the anticipation of an upcoming game release, watching every trailer, counting down the days, and maybe even pre-ordering or wishlisting it to ensure you have the opportunity to enjoy it on day one. Then comes the announcement that the game has been delayed. If you're lucky, it'll only be a few months, but more often than not, it's pushed back to the following year or even longer. Game delays have become increasingly common over the past decade, as industry standards rise and developers try to compete with massive games that take over 100 hours to complete. Currently, there are a staggering 34 major game delays, with plenty of notable ones that people are eagerly waiting for new information on. While delays sometimes cause frustration and confusion, a famous quote often attributed to Shigeru Miyamoto, who is the creator of Mario, Donkey Kong, Zelda, Star Fox, and Pikmin, perfectly encapsulates the importance of these delays. It states, "A delayed game is eventually good, but a rushed game is forever bad." While he may have not technically said it, the message still applies. The majority of these game delays happen because developers want to add supplementary content to the game and avoid releasing an unfinished product, unlike certain studios that rush games out. This is typically disappointing for many people, as it completely ruins their expectation. However, let's discuss why delays are necessary for producing quality games, along with examples of delayed games that turned out exceptional and a game that had potential and could have reached it with further delays. First, let's take a closer look at why games get delayed. We have all set unrealistic deadlines for ourselves before. Maybe you thought it was possible to finish an extremely long paper in a day, only to realize it was rushed and poorly written. But by then, it was too late. An identical situation happens in game development. Publishers predominantly set looming deadlines, and sometimes there isn't enough time for the game to be properly finished, leaving developers with two choices. They can either release the game as planned, relying on the franchise along with the anticipation to carry out sales despite its unfinished state, or they can delay it, ensure a more polished experience with fewer issues. While delaying the game leads to a significantly better final product, it risks frustrating both stakeholders and players eagerly awaiting its release. This is largely why unfinished games are more common among AAA studios. They face immense pressure to meet unrealistic deadlines, often resulting in games with great potential being labeled as failures. In contrast, indie developers have more flexibility. Since their games typically possess smaller teams and are sometimes self-published, delays don't carry the same level of scrutiny or backlash. Moreover, as many of you already know, game development is one of the most difficult and time-consuming creative processes out there, making delays a necessary part of ensuring quality. Game development involves numerous components, working together to create a cohesive and engaging experience. Coding, art, animation, sound design, storytelling, and game design all play essential roles, with the large-scale games often requiring separate teams to handle each aspect. With so many moving parts, meeting deadlines can be challenging, leading to either delays or an unfinished release. Nevertheless, when developers or publishers choose to delay a game, it increases the chance of delivering an overall better experience. A great example of how delays can lead to an exceptional final product is Breath of the Wild, which won Game of the Year in 2017, surpassing other well-received titles like Persona 5 and Super Mario Odyssey. With a 97 score on Metacritic and a reputation as one of the greatest games of all time, it's clear that its development time paid off. In comparison to other games, Breath of the Wild has a unique case as it was delayed twice. It was initially announced in 2013 with a planned 2015 release date. It was pushed back to 2016 and then again to 2017 to correspond with the launch of the Nintendo Switch. While it's impossible to measure exactly how much better the game became because of these delays, the final product quality is evident. Breath of the Wild revolutionized the Zelda series, shifting into a vast open world experience with unparalleled freedom. Even today, with a plethora of open world games releasing, few games offer the same level of exploration, with players having the capability to take on the final boss immediately after completing the tutorial. If skilled enough, players could finish a game that typically takes around 50 hours in just 23 minutes. Moreover, the various shrines and trials scattered across the landscape can be completed at any time, allowing variation for a regular playthrough. The puzzles themselves are meticulously designed, as you use Link's newly acquired abilities to circumvent different areas. These all showcase the depth and flexibility that makes Breath of the Wild truly special. Furthermore, it's notable to mention how the release date shift allowed Breath of the Wild to launch alongside the Nintendo Switch, proving to be a massive advantage. Not only did this mean the game benefited from better performance due to the Switch's increased power over the Wii U, but it additionally avoided being tied to a console that was widely considered a failure for Nintendo. The Wii U struggled throughout its lifespan, selling an abysmal 13 million units in 4 years, while the Switch surpassed that in just its first year with 17 million units sold. By the end of 2024, Switch sales reached an impressive 150 million, more than 10 times the Wii U's total, ensuring that Breath of the Wild remained in the spotlight and continued to be a strong seller even multiple years after its initial launch. These two delays, which added up to an extra 2 years of development time, ultimately helped Zelda reach the same level of mainstream popularity as Mario and Pokemon. Furthermore, it played a crucial role in Nintendo reclaiming its dominance in the gaming market. Breath of the Wild forever changed the open world genre, influencing countless games that aim to replicate its sense of freedom and adventure. Much of this immense success can be attributed to the extra time given to its development, proving that the extremely long wait was well worth it. Resembling these delays, Tears of the Kingdom, the sequel to Breath of the Wild, also experienced one. Originally scheduled for a 2022 release, the game was pushed back to 2023. However, what stood out was how Nintendo handled the delay. Instead of a vague announcement, they released a dedicated video explaining the reasoning behind the delay, providing transparency while also revealing a new release window for spring 2023. They even included new gameplay footage, being the first substantial look at the game in years, helping maintain excitement. Given the anticipation surrounding the game, this level of communication was an intelligent move. As for Tears of the Kingdom itself, it didn't just live up to expectations, it surpassed them. While Breath of the Wild remains a great game, Tears of the Kingdom improves on nearly every aspect. The world is even larger and more expansive. The story is more engaging with cutscenes, alongside an unexpected plot twist. The side content feels richer and more rewarding. The puzzles showcase even greater creativity, and most notably, the freedom given to players is unmatched, due to the Sky Islands, helping it even exceed that of Breath of the Wild, which was already praised for its open-ended design. The game was originally announced at E3 2019, meaning it took 4 years to release, the same amount of time as Breath of the Wild. But once again, the wait was well worth it, as Tears of the Kingdom became a must-play title and was nominated for the 2023 Game of the Year award before losing to Baldur's Gate 3. This pattern of delays leading to exceptional games isn't new for the Zelda franchise. Another great entry, Ocarina of Time, also faced delays. It was initially announced in 1995, with a planned release in 1997. The game was pushed back as developers expanded their ambitions due to Banjo and Kazooie. When it finally launched in 1998, it became one of the most critically acclaimed games ever, often regarded as a timeless masterpiece. Fittingly for a game considering manipulated time, this delay only made it more legendary. This recurring theme shows that delays, especially for Zelda games, often results in memorable experiences. It's amusing that all three of these previous games were Zelda titles, especially considering that the famous quote is from the creator of Zelda. They all demonstrate how beneficial delays can be for a game, in addition to how much they help the franchise as a whole. Nintendo has clearly found success in taking the extra time to refine Zelda games, and at this point, it's unlikely that anyone will be irritated if the next 3D Zelda entry ends up getting delayed as well. In contrast to the Zelda franchise, there's the other side of delays. A game that had immense potential, but was ultimately ruined by its unfinished state and numerous bugs. Anthem, an incredibly hyped looter shooter from BioWare, serves as a prime example. This is the same studio behind the Mass Effect series, which was a highly regarded franchise in earlier installment. While Anthem did receive a delay, it was evident that multiple delays were necessary to properly address its noticeable issues. The game was first announced at E3 in 2017, showcasing stunning graphics, dynamic combat, and an intriguing premise. One of its most exciting features was the flight mechanics, which immediately stood out as a highlight. A year later, another trailer was released at E3, once again generating excitement and making the game look incredibly promising. However, when Anthem finally launched on February 22nd, 2019, it suffered one of the worst releases in gaming history. The game was riddled with bugs, something commonplace for a title rush by a AAA studio. It was clear that there was an inadequate amount of time for developers to polish the game before its release. Moreover, the story is widely regarded as being disappointing. and failed to live up to the expectations set by the developers. It was bland, difficult to follow, and lacked depth. The protagonists and supporting characters felt underdeveloped, making it harder for players to actually be engaged. The ending in particular was underwhelming, leaving the impression that much more could have been done to enhance the narrative. This was in contrast to Mass Effect games. They're often considered some of the greatest games of all time, with stories that were routinely praised. The overall lack of content in Anthem was another major disappointment. The main story could be completed in roughly 15 hours, which is relatively short for a AAA game. However, this would have been much of an issue if the game had endgame content to keep players invested, as the core appeal of a looter shooter game is to acquire better gear. Unfortunately, this was Anthem's biggest flaw, as the endgame content was practically non-existent. Exploring the visually stunning open world to gather loot might have been enjoyable at first, but it quickly became repetitive. Beyond that, the only other option was the strongholds, which were recycled story missions with increased difficulty for better loot. This was not only lazy design, it was also severely lacking in variety, as there was only 3 strongholds available. There were also legendary contracts, which were repeatable quests that provided rewards. While they could be completed daily, they lacked depth and quickly became monotonous. Later in patch 1.3, a new game mode called Cataclysm was introduced, offering a fresh experience compared to the rest of the game. This mode featured a series of different areas, each with unique bosses or mechanics for players to engage with. Nevertheless, by the time Cataclysm was released, being 6 months after launch, many players had already moved on, and the game had largely been forgotten. We just covered the many ways that Anthem fell short, but what exactly did it do well that made so many people believe it had potential? The aspects that were universally praised were its gameplay, visuals, and overall feel. Many players appreciated the core mechanics, which initially seemed promising. First, let's discuss what made the gameplay so enjoyable. Anthem features a traditional class system seen in other looter shooters, like Destiny, with 4 distinct javelin types: Colossus, the tank, Scepter, the agile javelin, Ranger, the balanced all-arounder, and Storm, the mage. Each class had unique abilities and ultimates, making them feel diverse. Moreover, the movement system was among the best in any game. Flying through the air as a javelin, seamlessly transitioning into combat, and then launching back into the skies felt incredibly smooth and satisfying. The fluidity of movement and engaging combat mechanics made Anthem's gameplay addictive, which is exactly the kind of experience that suits a looter shooter, where players are expected to spend hours grinding for better gear. Next, the game was aesthetically pleasing. Every animation in the game was extremely well done. It's unusual for a game that failed in various categories to still be so well polished in regards to gameplay and visuals. The smooth combat, fluid movement, and stunning graphics all culminated to make Anthem feel great to play. You would definitely have to experience it for yourself to understand just how satisfying it is. Unfortunately, in this case, the bad far outweighed the good. The saying, "Don't judge a book by its cover," fits this game perfectly. At first glance, based on trailers and gameplay previews, Anthem seemed like a must-buy. However, once players explored past the surface, the numerous issues became impossible to ignore. As a result, the game quickly lost momentum, with its player base dwindling in just a month, an especially bad sign for a live service looter shooter. But it was inevitable. With no PvP, no enjoyable endgame content, and nothing substantial to keep players invested, there was little reason to stick around. Eventually, BioWare announced a complete overhaul of Anthem, giving hope to those who like this gameplay. This kind of revival has been seen before, most notably with No Man's Sky, which was launched to severe criticism but was completely transformed through dedicated updates. Thanks to the developers' persistence, it not only redeemed itself, but remains a popular and actively updated game to this day. For the revamp, a variety of new features were announced, including additional content, upgraded skill trees, and more. However, as you probably already know, it was cancelled in March 2021, officially marking the end of Anthem. So, what caused Anthem to fail, and how might a delay have helped? We already covered why the gameplay was masterfully done, but it's undeniable that further time was a necessity to flesh out the other areas of the game. A delay could have provided them the opportunity to refine these aspects, potentially keeping the game alive and supported today. Despite EA being the publisher, the majority of the fault for Anthem's release failure can be placed on BioWare, as they had 7 years of development time. It's evident they didn't utilize this lengthy development time effectively, leading to the game not meeting the high standards of interested players. To make matters worse, reports later revealed that BioWare developers were severely overworked in the months leading up to the game's release, resulting in widespread burnout. frustration, and even depression. Crunch culture has long been an issue in the gaming industry and other software-based fields, especially when deadlines remain unrealistic. While conditions have improved somewhat in recent years, it was particularly bad throughout the 2010s. No employee should be forced to endure a dreadful working environment, and delays can help completely mitigate those issues. In the end, a game that had the possibility to rival popular looter shooters ended up collapsing in the span of 2 years. Anthem was a AAA game that certainly needed delays to refine and polish its content. As mentioned previously, delays for big budget games are far less common than for indie titles. Indie games often launch with little initial recognition and gain popularity through various social media, while AAA games generate immense hype through high-budget marketing campaigns. Because of this, publishers often push for timely releases to capitalize on the momentum, even at the cost of quality. An indie game that defied this trend and exploded in popularity was Cuphead. It stands among the most iconic indie games, alongside Undertale, Hollow Knight, and Stardew Valley. Despite being released in 2017, Cuphead highlights a more traditional game structure, featuring level-based progression with a mix of platforming and challenging boss battles. The game received widespread praise for its innovative level design, unique animation style, meticulously hand-drawn visuals, and a thrilling soundtrack. However, its development process was extremely challenging. Let's commence with the beginning of Cuphead's development. The game was created by Studio MDHR, founded by two brothers who always dreamed of making a game. The goal was to replicate a classic gaming experience with well-designed gameplay, opting for a 2D style at a time when most new releases were in 3D. This was a massive shift, as even long-time 2D franchises were completely altering their styles to cater towards more players. Moreover, they attempted to emulate the animation techniques of early 20th century cartoons, providing Cuphead its signature look. Development officially began in 2013 when the studio was formed, and as time went on, additional people joined the team to aid bringing their vision to life. To demonstrate the considerable amount of dedication that went into Cuphead, the developers quit their jobs and even remortgaged their houses to ensure the game's success. It was first announced at Microsoft's E3 showcase, immediately capturing people's attention due to its distinctive art style. Originally set for a 2015 release, the game was delayed to mid-2017, as the developers wanted to ensure that the project they poured their hearts into would be as polished as possible. Cuphead finally launched on September 29, 2017, and the delay proved worthwhile. Upon release, it was widely recognized as one of the best indie games of its time. In only 2 weeks, Cuphead sold 1 million copies, and 2 million in the first 12, which is a massive achievement for the majority of games, and especially for one possessing a small development team. On Steam, the game peaked at an impressive 19,000 concurrent players. The reviews are overwhelmingly positive, praising the developers for their creative approach to design unique and challenging boss battles. For example, a notable boss fight features a red genie in the middle of a desert, flying on a carpet while the player pilots an airplane. His attacks showcase the game's imaginative design, from controlling a puppet resembling Mugman to summoning a coffin that bursts open, releasing flying skeletons. These details highlight the level of innovativeness that made Cuphead such a beloved title. 2D games, even recent ones, sometimes struggle to create a captivating experience that keeps players engaged. A lack of dynamic backgrounds or insufficient in-game action can make them feel lifeless. In contrast, 3D games typically have an easier time immersing players through expansive environments and exploration. However, Cuphead completely avoided this issue, which played a major role in its success. Beyond its gameplay, players also loved the variety of power-ups available for purchase in the shop. Each one was unique, allowing for customization based on individual playstyles, something rarely seen in traditional 2D games. Additionally, as mentioned before, Cuphead is a challenging game, and that difficulty enhances the overall experience, making each victory feel rewarding. Due to the game's popularity, a DLC was announced, and it even made its way to Netflix, highlighting how its delayed release and passionate development contributed to its widespread impact. Similar to the base game, the DLC, The Delicious Last Course, also faced multiple delays. Something I noticed while writing this is that its initials spell DLC, though I was unable to find confirmation of whether that was intentional or not. Either way, I think it's a funny coincidence, so I needed to point it out. Back to the DLC, it was originally announced 10 months after Cuphead's successful release. It was intended to be the final content update, fully wrapping up the game as well as the Cuphead franchise. Initially set for a 2019 release, it was delayed to 2020, then pushed back again to 2021. Later that year, it was delayed once more, However, during the Game Awards at the end of 2021, it finally received a release date of June 30th, 2022. Coinciding with this announcement, a classic-style trailer showcased new gameplay and boss fights, building excitement. Despite a total of 3 delays, once again, the additional time paid off for Studio MDHR and people interested in the game. The Delicious Last Course received better reviews than the base game, although, in reviews and discussions, people noted the length of the available content. It was possible to beat in only a few hours if you were decent at the game, leading to disappointment. This was especially the case considering the multitude of delays. As exemplified in Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, delays often accompany an abundance of content as developers had the full opportunity to implement various concepts. While it wasn't the biggest expansion, especially taking into account the 4-year wait, each of the 12 boss fights were exceptional. The DLC also introduced a new playable character, Miss Chalice, who had a different gameplay style compared to Cuphead and Mugman. Additionally, the DLC added new weapons like the cover shot, which functioned similarly to the wide shot but with a more spread out attack pattern. The DLC also debuted a new type of level that replaces the run and gun platforming levels called the King of Games. It involved parrying and allowed you to get coins for the new items. The Delicious Last Course definitely delivered on what originally made the game a success in the first place. In resemblance to the base game, the DLC sold extremely well, as players were excited to get back into one of the best 2D experiences. In a span of a week, it already sold 1 million copies. Currently in 2025, the base game has sold over 6 million units, cementing itself as one of the most popular indie games of all time. The 2016 delay allowed Studio MDHR to take the time they needed while assuring the developers weren't overworked. In an interview with IGN, the studio director even mentioned that she didn't mind the Delicious Last Course being delayed multiple times, as her priority was maintaining a healthy work environment for the team. As previously discussed with BioWare, mismanaged time and strict deadlines can lead to unfortunate situations, but Cuphead's developers avoided that by prioritizing their team's well-being. Now, with Cuphead officially wrapped up, the studio has gained recognition. It's presumably working on a new project inspired by classic Zelda games. Topping Cuphead would be no easy task, but given their dedication, the next game is likely to be another success. Cuphead made an entire studio famous with its debut game. Much of this accomplishment can be attributed to the smart, well-timed delays, which not only resulted in a polished experience, but also ensured a positive work atmosphere. In the end, it led to a 2D masterpiece that won't be forgotten. Ultimately, game delays are relatively rare, but when developers have an adequate amount of time, the outcome is a significantly better final product. There are several other examples of this, besides the ones we covered. For instance, Red Dead Redemption 2 was delayed about a year, with the result one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time, receiving praise for its immersive world. Similarly, Persona 5 was originally slated for a winter 2014 release, but didn't launch until September 2016. In consequence, the game possesses a multitude of content and aided in popularizing the Persona franchise. On the flip side, there are numerous games that clearly needed more time, with a perfect example being Fallout 76, with a near unplayable launch due to various bugs. Naturally, delays do not guarantee a great game. In certain cases, such as Anthem, additional time was not sufficient to address the game's issues, and further delays were simply not feasible. However, in most instances, delays contribute to the most entertaining experience, which is ultimately beneficial for both developers and players, especially for popular franchises. It's encouraging to see delays becoming more common as they help ensure higher quality games while also supporting healthier development conditions. So, next time your most anticipated game gets delayed, remember it's likely to produce an amazing outcome. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video.